Welcome to Future Campus. My name's Tim Winkler. I'm here with George Williams from Western Sydney University, who has been all across the media in the last week or two with his new book, which is Aiming Higher: Universities and Australia's Future. Welcome, George.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. It's good and always good to speak to you about these things.
Absolutely. Now, jumping straight into it, we've been talking about social license for the best part of 2 years now, but there still seems to be a massive divide between universities and the community. Is it possible that universities are relishing the role of pantomime villain and don't see a need to court the public?
I wish. I think it's more often the role of, head in the sand. Unfortunately, I think the sector has hoped these issues would go away. I don't think any of us enjoys the negativity and really the relentless negativity that we've had as a sector. I think it's really confusing and distressing to many people because we're here for the public good. They know it's really great people in the sector who are here for our students, all of these things that matter, but it hasn't been cutting through. And there are deeply entrenched perceptions of the sector that are doing us harm. And if anything, they've escalated over that period of time, including through, this enormous regulatory intervention, through inquiries, new changes and the like. So I think if anything, I'd characterise it as a sector that's just desperately hoping we can move back to focus on our core business, which is delivering good for the community. And in my case, what I'm saying is, well, we need to get there, but agency's in our hands. We're not victims in this. It's what we do that matters. And the important thing is that actually, we take our mission by the scruff of its neck and really deliver for our students in ways that change perceptions and get us out of this dark space.
Do you think you've mentioned regulation there? Do you think regulation has made that more challenging to make the change for universities? There's so much compliance that's been laid on over the last 12 months.
Yes, and of course, over a longer period too. It's a bit like the banking sector that you, once you're in the public eye, you get more inquiries, more regulation. It throws up more information. Gee, you're in more inquiries and more in the public eye. It becomes this circle of regulatory and media interest, a spiral you can't get out, and it's a downward spiral too, unfortunately. And if anything, again, that has increased. And we've got the New South Wales inquiry, the Senate inquiry, the Victorian inquiry into governance. We've got the separate federal government process into governance. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, but you can mention the Texas powers. So we're in the thicket of a amazing array of regulatory changes that put enormous pressure on the sector and also run the risk that we'll see much higher compliance burdens that will further remove our ability to direct resources to where they should be, teaching, research, serving community. And we have to change the narrative because at the moment, the direction is not a positive one for us, but it's one that's explicable given the community concern. And where you have that, politicians will respond.
You've been quite brave in the language that you've used to describe the problem, to label it very plainly as a crisis and an issue. Do you have concerns that the rest of the sector is not falling in beside you on that in that language and in seeing that concern?
Oh, not really. I just look at this that all I can do is what I can do. I lead Western Sydney University. That's a great privilege. And my job is to speak on behalf of my community. And I think from my end, it needs plain speaking, honesty, transparency, and critically humility as well. We've got to acknowledge where things have gone wrong. This isn't just a PR or a perception issue. The committee rightly has identified problems with higher education, particularly when it comes to serving the needs of domestic Australian students. And at my end, yeah, I'm comfortable. It's my job to speak on behalf of my community. I follow with great interest others. We've seen really strong contributions from Bill Shorten recently, Ian Martin. So I really admire what some other leaders are saying as well. I think, if anything, I detect a bit of a changing of the tide. I'd also call out Carolyn Evans from UA. Great speech recently at the press club where she highlighted student fee reform and JRG. Spot on, I thought. This is the sector speaking powerfully on behalf of students. So I think actually we're seeing some really strong interventions from a number of people that give me great hope that we can turn this around.
So I want to jump into a couple of the specifics of the book. You say to even get close to the Accords target of 80% of working age Australians with a tertiary education by 2050, things must change and fast. Now, there's no money in forward estimates that we've seen for this. There's no obvious plan beyond hand passing most of the planning to ATEC. If the federal government won't stump up the money, are we being sold a pipe dream? When does someone need to say this thing is not moving?
And I think at the moment, I would say it's not moving fast enough. And 2050 seems a long way away, but it's a bit like net zero in 2050. You don't move now, you don't meet the target. It's the same with students. We're talking about a generational change that will need a generation to be brought about. So those 25 years are going to be critical. It will require higher investment, particularly to support students. It will require tackling things like fees, which are having such a big impact on some students. Say at Western, we're seeing students choosing not to study at university as a result. And I think it also requires a rethink of particularly our use of technology and the like. How do we embrace that in a way that will actually deliver personalisation down to the individual student? So there's a lot we can do, but it does start in many ways with the regulatory settings and government. I think the Accord's spot on. It's the right plan, but I think we need some more urgency in some areas like student fees to get going and attract more students to the sector.
You mentioned technology right there. It's a critical ingredient in and a critical disruption with where we're at now. You say we must move away from a focus on the transmission of knowledge and instead concentrate on skills such as critical analysis and creativity, where humans can add value to generative AI systems in the book. Now, there's a whole generation of parents, employers, teachers, and so on who believe unis are where you should be just getting knowledge transmission, and it's a hard sell to get them to believe that critical analysis and creativity are where universities should be. How are you going to change that and get that message right?
And I recognise it is a hard sell. And one of the big challenges we have is just a misalignment between student preferences coming out of high school and where the jobs of the future are. And we see that really clearly. And students want great jobs, but they don't have that information. So that's one of the things we need to focus on. What's the pathway for success for students? But I actually think, Tim, this might be a bit easier than we think. AI is not just a technological revolution, it's a cultural revolution and an educational revolution. And of course, what we see now with our students is an emerging fear is that will they learn much at university when generative AI can just do their assignments for them and give them summaries and the like? So I think our students are telling us very clearly they're worried as much as they can be excited about this technology. And unless we change, we're going to be focused on essentially educating them around something that a generative AI system can do at least as well as they can by the time they graduate. What also fortifies, I think, here is just a lot of good industry work as well. So Microsoft, for example, one of our partners, has come out clearly and said that, yeah, they need the technical skills, but the humanities are critical. They actually need people who understand how generative AI impacts on the community. So philosophy, history, English literature, those critical thinking skills are actually being highlighted. And I'd say as much as this is a time of the rise of AI skills, it's also the rise of the humanities into direct jobs ready relevance because it's people who can marry those two, I think, who are going to be best placed. And that I think is the job of universities is to prepare people for those jobs that don't even exist yet with that breadth of skills that makes them resilient, adaptable, creative, ready for whatever society is going to throw their way.
Links really nicely to what I thought was maybe the epicenter of what you've written here, which is about the competition between information and misinformation. You
Mm.
wrote knowledge is in competition with misinformation, disinformation, and social media, and too often knowledge is losing out. These broader focuses are challenging the role of universities and their focus on evidence and rational debate. Universities have got to jump in there, basically. Oh,
Couldn't have said it better myself, Tim.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But this seems to be perhaps the most critical part of the essay in some ways because it's not just talking about universities and their problems, it's talking about society and goes to the heart of, yes, we are part of the solution, but also if we don't have truth, if we don't have evidence, if we don't have discussions revolving around those things,
Mm.
uh, it's a very uncomfortable place for universities to be in. You've talked about that with social media in your own sort of personal way in terms of TikTok and involvement. How do we get institutions involved more broadly in that uncomfortable place?
Yeah, and it's a great question. It's not only uncomfortable, it's deeply threatening to our mission because, I mean, what is the role of a university in a world defined by misinformation, populism, and denial of expertise? But that's the world increasingly we're in. And for me, I think the starting point is as universities and people in higher education, we've got to be honest and upfront about those societal changes. We've got to recognise them, and also they're not going away. Misinformation problems will escalate, if anything, and particularly when some of those issues get trimmed with AI and other areas, deep fakes and the like, enormous possibility to drive societal harm. So I actually think universities are threatened, but on the other hand, we're the solution. We are the bastions of rationality, knowledge. We're the bastions of actually supporting rational, truthful debate. And for me, I think there's never been a more important time for universities to step up, articulate, defend, and really promote our mission as places that really are for those values. And for me, the key there is not only to boldly and unashamedly step forward defending and articulating our mission, but we've got to do it in unfamiliar and uncomfortable places, as you've indicated, because it's fine for us to do it to, as we do very well, to the initiated, to the people we're used to communicating about. But this is happening on social media. This is happening in forums where universities are largely absent. And I think we are absent at our peril because unless we reach out and we're connected to the places these big societal shifts are, the danger is they'll happen and we'll just get left behind and we'll just be under more pressure. So I think we've got a big, important societal mission, drive public good through emphasizing truth, rationality, and the value of expertise.
So there's been a lot of discussion about skill sets of academics and then just how far should we ask our academic staff to go in terms of the work that they do. So if I'm at the coalface teaching business, am I going to take time out of my day to rebut mistruths about business and about my discipline? How does that fit in? Do we need to do social media training? Do we have to make it a part of jobs? How's it going to work in practice?
Oh, and I think, of course, universities already have a really proud mission of community education. We have a lot of academics are out there talking about their expertise. You could think of the extraordinary role that academics played during the pandemic, explaining at a time of crisis and enormous distress in ways that provided comfort and brought rationality to that debate. Very, very powerful and effective. So we have a record of doing it. And in fact, at my uni, as with others, it's recognized. It can be part of promotion. This is doing your job. I'm not saying everyone has to do it, but this is core business for universities, being in public debate about the issues of the day within people's fields of expertise. I think the shift is that we need probably to take that further, given the challenges. Yes, more training is needed, valuing and recognizing, but also we've got to particularly recognise we need our academics to get out of their comfort zone into those places where we don't normally tread, and that is social media and other places. We need to arm and support them for that. And that might even be sometimes engaging in online forums and the like, where things are getting out of control and injecting some rationality. I don't kid myself about how easy that is, but that's where views are being formed, particularly in younger people today. And I think, yes, there is a role for academics in that forum as there is in the traditional media.
Obviously, it's a more risky environment for academics to have to play in. So institutions will have to work out how they can stand behind academics and where the limits are.
Yes, it does come with higher risk, but gee, the risk of not doing so is even higher. Of abdicating public debate on key issues on forums where universities and academics are not present to make sure it is truthful, accurate, and informed by rationality. So it's a risky and difficult time, without a doubt. But I think the answer for universities is boldness and courage in these areas. We've got a core mission going back across many countries, many centuries. We've got a role to play in building good societies. It's just that's changed how we do it in the modern world. But and I would say for me, very confronting, even the stuff I do on social media, TikTok and the like, they are not my natural platform. I've spent a lot of time, somewhat embarrassed, micro humiliations, all of that. But I suppose I do it because it's necessary if you want to connect with people. And also because for my team, I try and say, look, if I can do it, we can get out there and we can bear the risk, including the risk of failure. That's okay. That's the sort of forum we're in. But we've just got to be we've got to be relevant, if you like, in ways that we won't be unless we're participants.
I love that when you walk around on campus, some people say, "Oh, you're the TikTok guy."
Well, they
That's
do, and then they often say, "What do you do here?" They absolutely do. Yeah, they say, "You're that guy on TikTok. What do you do here?" And I say, "I'm the vice chancellor." And they say, "Who's that? What does the vice chancellor do?" They don't usually read their emails. One person did say, "Oh, Chancellor, is that like from Star Wars?" Think of Chancellor Palpatine, but it's good. It opens a conversation. It's hard as a VC to connect with your students. So every time a student comes up, it's great. Like, you know, how are you going? What's your challenges? We have a good discussion. It breaks the ice, and particularly the live sessions we do on Instagram and TikTok, we can get over 1,000 people to those, and they're raw and powerful, and they talk about food, rent, study problems, and in ways that they're not comfortable in doing in other forums. So you've just got to go to where our people are. And if you do that, sometimes the medium is the message. And the message here is we're here for you and we'll go to you and listen.
So that was probably the last topic I wanted to touch on. There's quite a sad sort of note through the essay about the costs, the social compact being broken, and the challenges there. Do you think we're stuck with a problem, a model that is broken? Or do we have to? Are we stuck with a higher cost model than is workable?
I think the model is broken for many young Australians. And I think our education system is failing them in ways that are not consistent with this being a country where everyone has a fair go, everyone has opportunity to achieve their best. You see that often in high schools. I know the federal government's focused on that, but the fact that we've seen in public high schools across the country a reduction of 10% of people completing high school is I just find devastating. We're going backwards in people completing high school. I look at it in our students who can come to university with literacy and numeracy problems, which reflect we've got more low SES students than any uni in the country. And we know that the lowest 25% of people in our society at 15 have the reading and writing skills of a 10-year-old. So it's a 5-year gap for the lowest SES. So when they get to us, that gap is still evident. And then you add in $51,000 in fees for an arts degree, which is the degree of choice for people from low SES, Indigenous, women. I mean, this is just a few indicators, but I'd say, yeah, it's a raw deal for young people, and too often it's poverty for them. Then you add the cost of living. I actually think we need a reckoning with this housing, education. We have an unfair society with a lot of intergenerational inequity. And personally, I think unis have a role rationally and truthfully calling that out. We need to fight for our students and fight for a fair go at education, starting with fair fees and a fair opportunity. So, yeah, I think there is sadness. I feel really distressed when I meet with those students. One recently I met with a paramedicine student who's living in their car because they can't afford to study. It's a paramedicine student, desperate need in the community, and something's going very wrong where a student has to live in their car, but it's not unusual. It's common across many universities in the country.
Well, I think your essay is a great start in getting the right conversations going and sets us up for a really healthy discussion on where we're headed into 2026. So thanks very much, George.
Pleasure, Tim. Thanks for having me.